Well, good afternoon, everybody. Happy Wednesday. Hope everybody's having a fantastic day. Let me get the chat pulled up here. Hey, Tanya, how's it going? Hey, Dave, what's going on, my friend? So, we're going to be talking about. I got the notification up a little late, so my bad. It's been pretty busy. Um, it's all about greenhouses today. Greenhouses. And a lot of people want to talk about them. If you guys have any questions at any time, shoot them in the chat. We can go over it. Doesn't matter. Hey, Purple Thumb Gardener. Glad to see you here. Purple Thumb Gardener has been listening for a long time, so thank you. You're here. So greenhouses, yeah, there's a lot. So I was kind of trying to think about how can we tackle this subject, and I think because we did a poll last time, and a lot of people don't have a greenhouse at all. So I think it's best, unless anybody doesn't want to, and the majority has to be, then we're just going to start at the beginning and basically looking to purchase a greenhouse. There's a lot of information out there. There's a lot of different options, and it depends on what you want to do. So, within this will be all of that. It's pretty broad, but I'm going to go right off the bat and say, if you want to grow in the middle of summer, or you want to grow summer plants in the winter, then you're going to need a very specific and very expensive greenhouse. In the middle of summer, you're going to need a cooling system and stuff like that. I let my greenhouse sit in the summer. I don't even walk in it. I hardly look at it. And in the winter, you have to be able to keep the temperature up above roughly 50. Higher would be better for your summer plants to keep going. So you got to be careful about that. But if you want to grow just regular winter vegetables in a greenhouse, you can lower those costs significantly. My greenhouse, I don't have electricity run out to it. I don't want to run electricity out to it, and I'm not going to run electricity out to it. So right off the bat, there's that. And the reason why is for expense, and really, well, expense on installing it and expense on running it. So it's kind of twofold. And we'll also talk about placement of a greenhouse. We try and fit that in there. So my greenhouse is a polycarbonate greenhouse. It's a for plastic. The panels are plastic, clear, so it lets light in. In the daytime, it heats up dramatically, and at night, it basically, without any modifications, which I have done some, it turns into basically the same temperature outside, maybe a degree more. Right now, for my area, I'm keeping it about 5 degrees more. So that really is a huge deal, because typically in the wintertime, our colder range nights will be like 20 degrees. So you're talking in there, it's 25, 27, 30, something like that. And in the broad scope, in the scheme of things, that's a big difference for plants. If you're growing the right plant, you're not going to have an issue with that. It can be a difference between harvesting and not harvesting in what we're going to call the off season. So when we were on the podcast, we were talking one day and we were like, well, what do you consider season extension? And we came up with a definition, because it's very broad. Our definition and my definition for season extension is anything outside of your last and first frost dates. So if your first frost was last night and you're still growing something, you are now in the season extension world. And so what we're doing with our greenhouses, we're prolonging our season extension. Does that mean that we're prolonging tomatoes? Not necessarily, no. We're prolonging the growing season as a broad term as well. So, and I harp on this tomato, peppers, and stuff like that because people come to the greenhouse and that's what they want. And it's not realistic. I've been in a couple really nice glass greenhouses. I've been in a bunch of greenhouses like mine. I've been in high tunnels, which are basically a low tunnel just on a bigger scale. I've been in a lot of those, and there are significant differences. But one thing I will say is, typically speaking, the bigger the better. Does that mean you should look at your yard and say, well, I can only fit an 8x10 greenhouse in here, but bigger is better. So since I can't get a 20x24 in here, I'm not even going to worry about it. Absolutely not. That is not what this means. This means if you can fit a 6x8, can you fit an 8x10? Just step up a little bit, because ultimately the other thing too is just like with our gardens, we're going to want more space, right? How many of you guys, go ahead and answer, how many of you guys want more space to grow in? There's definitely people out there that don't, but as a whole, it's very common to want to grow in a bigger space. So that's the first thing. The other thing too is, as far as like heat retention, you have more heat that builds up in there. And so it'll soak it up a little bit better. But you got to get into the dynamics of the panels. So we have plastic panels, polycarbonate, and then you have glass. There are different R values. So there's an R value for the polycarbonate, which is much lower. R value is how much insulation properties it has. So you can do multiple things to improve that, but you're always going to be chasing your tail. You're always going to just be going around in circles. You put up the insulation, take it down, put it up, take it down. It's too hot, too cold, it's almost not worth it if you want to do something and keep that greenhouse much, much warmer than it's designed to do. Then if you live way up north, you need to really think about, if you live in the south, you also need to think about that, because up north it's too cold, and then down south it gets pretty warm in the winter. Now, if you live somewhere that gets 40 degrees as a low, you more than likely can do some kind of tomato plant or something in there over the season. So, keep that in mind. But we're going with a mid-range here. We're going with the not too hot, not too cold, right in the middle. People fall. What we think of cold and what plants think of cold, the right plants are two completely different things. So remember that. Right now we're in the 60s at night and 80s during the day, but we were down at 37, 34 degrees, and my garden was just like, what's up? Let's do this. Now, when it gets cold or when it gets hot, those plants are like, oh my gosh, I'm going to die. And we're sitting here thinking it feels good outside. So we need to remember that right off the bat. Now, like I said, my greenhouse fluctuates dramatically during the day. And we've discussed on this show and on the podcast that the temperature swings are more dangerous than the actual cold in the greenhouse or to the plant. And so on the flip side of that, though, the warming during the day is crucial to the survival of the plant after a freeze. So when it warms up, the molecules release and the plant kind of rebounds. It'll plump up. You go out there, let's say you've got collards growing, kale, and even lettuce, and you look at it and it's limp and it's frozen. But then you come out there at the end of the day after it's warmed up and it's plumped up. Well, that's because of the warming that occurs during the day. Now, when you put a greenhouse up, that just magnifies it. So on those days, like there's been times when we would have absolutely lost everything because of the cold, but whatever was in the greenhouse and even the low tunnels was able to survive and keep going because of the way our weather is. We could get, 20 degrees one night and 40 degrees the next night, and most days it gets up usually into the 50s, 60s, even the 70s in the winter. So we do have that rebound time. And so when we would have lost our entire garden, we were able to save it because we had these structures. And the greenhouse, especially the greenhouse is, you've got, let's say our base level is our garden, right? And then you go up like 2 notches and you've got your low tunnels. And then you go up like 10 notches and you've got your polycarbonate greenhouse. It's just light years difference, believe it or not. And the reason why is because it's bigger and it doesn't let the frost get on the plant. So it's really important. And it keeps the drying winds off of it. So all of those combined really help. And the other issue with low tunnels in comparison is they build up a lot of moisture inside, which can, disease can proliferate in there. There can be a lot of issues with that. Very humid in there. And the greenhouses typically will open up and vent during the day. So like I have a graph on my phone. I'll pull it up and hold it up to the camera for you. I have my sensor tells me what's going on in there, and you can see every day that the temperature goes up. But when the temperature goes up, the humidity drops. So it's got to it's downloading from the sensor right now, but I'll show you guys. And that's really important because that's what helps go through. So right now in my greenhouse, it is 89 degrees. And this is the time of day that the greenhouse peaks right now. So this is the last 23 hours. So if you can see, this is the temperature and this is the humidity. So as the temperature goes down, the humidity goes up. And as the temperature goes up, the humidity goes down, right? Now I've done this in my low tunnel, and it was the humidity was not really flat, but it didn't bottom out like that. So let me see if I can pull up some data. It's not really hooked up right now. I'll see if I can get some old data from it. Probably not. I'm a little too far away. So there's an issue there. Now, again, I said in the beginning that I've been in all kinds of greenhouses. So the polycarbonate we've covered. Now, for instance, my grandfather, he had a high-end glass greenhouse. And you go, now it was hot in the summertime, but it had a cooling system in it. It had multiple vents in it because the bigger the greenhouse is, the more vents you'll have. So it would, then they would have fans that would kick on. It even had heat in it that would pick up. So, in the summertime, it would be pretty hot, but not like, oh my God, I'm going to die. I mean, I can look at mine while I'm talking and pull up the hottest temperature in my greenhouse this year. And it's kind of shocking what it is. But so you have that option in there. Now the glass has a higher R value, so that really retains it. I would say this. If you wanted a greenhouse and you were like, look, this is what I want to do, I would absolutely fork over the change to do it. And it's not change, I would fork over the money to do it. But if you can't, then you got to go with the next best option. But is the polycarbonate greenhouse like I have the next best option? I don't think so. It comes in a package. The whole greenhouse weighs 80 pounds. So you have to set it up right, and it takes about 2 days to set up. You have to follow directions to the T. If you build a high tunnel, which is basically a low tunnel, just bigger, you could get greenhouse plastic and put on it. I feel like those are better. The ones that I've been in, you can really vent them like majorly. And you can lift, first of all, you can remove the plastic completely and use that section in the summertime if you wanted. In the wintertime, a lot of times you can get like rolling systems to roll up the edges and then just totally vent it out, and that really makes a difference because it completely minimizes that temperature swing. So what we're doing is when you vent it like that, let's say it's 50 degrees outside, it'll probably still be, let's say, 60 in there, maybe even 70. But then as it gets cooler, like when you get home from work, you can roll it down and trap that heat in that's built up, and you have more space in there so you can do more for heat retention, right? And heat retention, like what I use 2 15-gallon tanks. I painted them black and I filled them with water. And that's what keeps it 15 or 5 degrees warmer. Now, if you had a big low tunnel or a bigger greenhouse, even, I keep saying low tunnel, but high tunnel, then you can see where you could get more water tanks in there, more larger volume, and create much more warmth within there. Not to mention you can do stuff like composting inside of it where it produces its own heat. But see, for me, like I get a lot of people recommending that I do these things, but I'm like, well, where am I going to grow? Like, I don't want to have a greenhouse filled with water tanks and compost piles. That's stupid. There's absolutely no point in that. I mean, I appreciate what you're saying, but think about it. I've got a 6x8 greenhouse. What am I supposed to do? So you got to know your limitations there. Otherwise, the high tunnels are cheaper to build. They're easier to build. They're easier to take down, and they're more multi-use. And that's a big thing for my homestead and garden is I want most things to be multi-use. So like my greenhouse right now is not exactly multi-use, but I do because I use it for cold stratification, some seed starting, growing in the wintertime, drying. So I'm getting multiple uses out of it, which is what I want to do. So the highest temperature, should have downloaded by now, was, you're not going to believe this, July 15th, 139 degrees. Now that's a peak. That was a hot day. But typically speaking, right around 111 in there in the summertime. So, I mean, what are you going to grow in that? You know what I mean? It's almost impossible. Now, you can't really take the panels off because the panels are part of the structure. You can, but if I could, I would. Let me put it that way, if it wasn't overly difficult. So when you're looking to buy a greenhouse, weigh your options, figure out what you want to put in it, when you want to grow in it, and if you're going to have power out to it, okay? And then placing your greenhouse, like if you want power to it, put it close to your house. Run an extension cord out to it, and you're done. You could always put something in there. I know you guys have probably seen, what's that lady's name on YouTube? Garden Answer, I believe. She's got a big greenhouse. But I mean, she's got the money for a big greenhouse, right? A lot of us aren't operating with that kind of cash, So if my greenhouse were to blow away well, actually, I take that back. When I ordered my greenhouse, they sent my greenhouse to the wrong house. So then they sent me a greenhouse. And then when I called, they sent me another one. And then the person who got the greenhouse actually called me and was like, hey, I got this thing. You want it? And it was so I've got an extra greenhouse in my shed. Even though I have an extra greenhouse in my shed, which is insane now that I think about it, if that one blows away, I'm not sure that I would put another one of those up. I may and I may not. I probably would. And the only reason why I would is because I have it. I would probably build like a high tunnel or something like that. As far as the layout in my garden goes, I don't really know how I would have that worked out, but I would figure something out if I wanted to. So, that says a lot, but at the same time, like I'm really happy with my greenhouse, and I went into it knowing what I wanted to grow. I knew that I was not concerned about growing summer plants longer than they should because I'd be fighting an uphill battle. So I went in there and I knew, like, this year I'm growing potatoes in there, which are, they're, as they mature, they're more frost sensitive. So I'm kind of taking a gamble, but I want to know what I can do in there. Um, I typically, like, I've got kale growing in there, but I got kale growing out in my garden, so it's like it doesn't really matter because, and the kale usually lasts the whole winter, so I'm not really missing anything by like risk losing it. So that's really what I use the greenhouse for, is like, what is frost sensitive, or not frost sensitive, what's the lower end of frost tolerance, let's put it that way. So I use it to extend my lettuce harvest, right? So our lettuce harvest will be done probably December-ish, but our greenhouse lettuce harvest more than likely will go straight through the winter until it starts to bolt, and the cause it to bolt. So that is an issue. The other thing, and what I'm hoping to do this year, is I pull the potatoes out, and what I'm going to try and do is put broccoli back in its place, hopefully earlier, and get it to seed or to grow, before I can get it in my garden. Now, I put my broccoli out in my garden around January, so kind of running out of time. But we'll just take it one step at a time and see what happens. I'm not overly concerned about it this year. I knew this was going to be a test, and I think it's really important. Again, if you have a bigger greenhouse, you can test a lot easier than us. With my greenhouse, if I lose those potatoes, I lose a whole half of the greenhouse, which is kind of an issue. But you wanted to get as much sun as possible. If you Best case scenario is you get morning sun, afternoon shade. That would be the best because it would warm it up quickly in the morning. So believe it or not, the first sun that comes up in the morning actually hits my greenhouse. It's through the trees, but as soon as that sun comes up, my greenhouse is already warmed up by 10 degrees within like 5 minutes. And so that really helps that process along. Now, as the sun travels, it gets back into the shade, so it kind of evens out. Because of those water tanks, when that sun goes behind the trees, it does not just, the temperature does not just tank down. And what ends up happening is, if I pull up this graph again, I hope you guys can see it. Can you guys see this graph when I show it up to the camera? Let me know. And what I'm going to do is I'm trying to go back into last year and pick a cold day and show you that when the coldest temperature for the day is. So last winter we had a warm winter. So the coldest my greenhouse got last year was 23.4 degrees. So when I hold this up, see, it's confusing because everything's backwards. So this is about 6 o'clock at night, and you can see it drops. Now the temperature was ultimately about 20 degrees. So you can see it never hit 20 degrees. And the coldest temperature is right about sunrise, right? Just so it doesn't stay for a long time, which is really important. So you're getting all of these benefits from it. And that's what helps the greenhouse grow. And minimizing that heat loss makes a big difference. All right. Any questions about greenhouse, the kind of greenhouse or the placement of greenhouses? Or whatever else I talked about, sorry. And I'm going to go back. Hey, Country Kirby. You should water your lettuce. I water my lettuce right now every other day. Hey, Brian. Hey, Urban Garden Chronicles. No, I do not have to heat the water. The sun, because I painted those tanks black, they heated the water. So those tanks were given to me actually. Buy them, like people have them all over the place. They're fairly cheap. And I went and I literally got a $2 can of spray paint and I spray painted it. And it's lasted. It's starting to chip off, but it's not a big deal. But that black will help retain that heat. If you, well, and I really want to keep this to no electricity. That's really what I want to keep this at, because you throw electricity in the mix and it gets wild. You can do a lot of things. What's up, Dan Lowe? Brian, I don't have any thoughts on sorry. I don't know. And also, while I'm here and you guys are dugout greenhouses, so we look. The whole idea is it's building a cold sink. So if you dig, a lot of times you dig like a trench in there, the cold would sink down because the cold air goes to the lowest point, and then it would kind of insulate the rest of your plants. I don't have a problem with it, but I just don't want to do it. I don't want to dig that deep. That's really all there is to it for me. Real quick, while I'm waiting for you guys to ask questions and stuff, for everybody that's a member of the channel, we are looking in. I'm trying to figure out a way to once a month sit down and have like everybody can call in somewhere and we can all sit and have like a group discussion about gardening or something. So I'm trying to figure that out. And if you're not a member, I would appreciate it if you did. It helps keep the channel going for sure. But we're trying to figure that out. It was actually Dave's idea. So I had been thinking about it, but when he asked, I was like, yeah, I got to do something. So we're going to try and figure that out. It would probably be more, if I'm imagining what I would like for it to be, is more like a think tank where people would come together and give their ideas and stuff like that about a certain topic. And then we can go from there. It's actually interesting. And something that you could do as well. I'm part of we started a bee club here, and we're in the beginning stages of talking about publishing a paper, doing an experiment on the bees, seeing which does what, or how certain things affect it. So that's something that we could even do too. I think it would be pretty neat. We'd have to make a control, but it would be interesting to figure that out. There's not a lot of solid data on gardening by individuals. What kind of mulch do I recommend? Okay, so in West, are you talking about for greenhouses, or are you talking about for the regular garden? Really, it doesn't matter though. I use whatever I can get my hands on, except for wood chips. I do not use wood chips. I hate wood chips. I will not use them. The first year it robs nitrogen, and it's just I had nothing but issues. I typically use chopped leaves and straw in scene. That's really all there is to it, and those will really keep it going. Now, that's the other thing about in the greenhouse too, is adding. So all the protections you do outside, if you bring them inside, it's just magnified. Mulch. You can even, inside a greenhouse, you can even build another low tunnel inside the greenhouse, and you start bringing it down. You start bringing the area that really needs to be heated down and double insulating, so you can do that too. What are you talking about, Dave? Cedar chips are bad. I just don't use wood chips. I use wood chips. I had nitrogen deficiencies. I had roly polies and snails like you wouldn't believe, and I had to just pull it all out, and I never looked back. And it was the worst garden. It was the worst garden I've ever had in the 25 years. So I just kind of walked away from it. And when I started using straw and really leaves are the best. This is the time to make mulch. Everybody's like, don't rake your lawns. I'm like, well, I'm not raking it for the lawn. I'm raking it for the garden. I don't care about anything else. And if you're going to buy straw, I'm not sure what Dave was referring to, but if you're going to buy straw, just make sure that you tell them you're going to use it for your garden. And a lot of times places will have two piles. They'll have one for another use and then one for gardens and stuff like that. It's usually not treated. Hey, Connie, I'm glad you came. Yeah, seeding straw. And plus, you can go get a bale of straw a lot cheaper. Like, I'm going to be honest. I've working on my little John Deere tractor. I had to buy a battery the other day. $75 at Lowe's, across the street at Advanced Auto or whatever, an auto parts store. It was $50, and then down the road from that, like next door at Tractor Supply, it was $40. I see it time and time again. Like Lowe's is overpriced, and so try and find a garden center. A lot of times they'll have, like the garden center here, they have a tractor trailer parked in the back that you almost have to know about, and they keep all of that straw and stuff like that in there. Yeah, urban gardening, that's a good thing to do. Getting bags of leaves from other people. I should do that and just leave the leaves on my lawn, let everybody else do the work. The problem is I did that one year and that somebody had, here it comes, dog shit all in it, and I put it all in the garden. It was terrible. It was all over my hands. We were out there gagging. It was awful. So might not be doing that, but otherwise, yeah, I would definitely do that. Cat, I don't do a 50-50 mix. I put straw down all year until the leaves come, and then I put the leaves down. And when the leaves are gone, I put the straw down. It's nothing crazy. I don't do anything wild. I don't overcomplicate it. It's literally whatever I can get my hands on, except for wood chips that will act as a mulch. Then I will put it on. And those are really the two things. The best thing you can do other than chop leaves is hay, but you're going to get a lot of seeds in it, and then you've got to deal with that. Yeah, Dave, I just got a load of donkey dew from somebody, but she puts it in her garden and the garden grows fine, so I don't think I have to worry about it. She's got like 2 donkeys. It's not like a big operation, but I have heard of stuff like that. There you go. Cherry pick it, urban gardening. Jason, I've actually contacted the company about that, and I'm going to be honest, I can't remember what they said, but I almost believe you could, if you wanted to, you could buy 2 greenhouses and put them together. Don't quote me on that. But again, if you're going to do that, you could take your greenhouse down and build one bigger than what you're talking about, cheaper. That's probably better. Now, let me say this, and I'll get to Connie and West in a second. Let me say this. I had somebody come on that greenhouse video I did last year, the other day. He may be in here, I don't know, and said, just get you some 2x4s and some plastic. That's a great idea. I understand that some people don't know how to build stuff, and we all got to start somewhere. But like, I can build some. I never build this house. Like, I got a friend who built his house he worked on the weekends. He's got a nice house, built it by himself, him and another guy. I could never do that. My walls would be crooked, my roof would slide off, the toilets would be overflowing or whatever. It would be a nightmare. So I understand that like you can't build, but when we're and this is one of the many reasons I like gardening and even homesteading so much, is because it doesn't have to be perfect. And it doesn't have plastic. The hardest part is putting in a doorway. And to be totally honest, you can find plans for that. It's like 4 or 5 2x4s. I think it's not overly complicated at all. It just seems like it is, but once you get it put up, it's not that bad. I mean, think about I've putting up a low tunnel, just bending the PVC. I mean, you're basically doing the same thing, but on a grander scale. Yeah, Connie, did you put the cardboard? In West, I know people that use pine straw. I've never done it because we have enough pine straw. I don't think it's bad. It all functions the same way. The only problem with pine straw is it doesn't break down as well. That's the only issue. Hey, Jeff, glad you're out of work. Yeah. So I'll just go ahead and talk about the cardboard. So the snails on the cardboard are actually a good thing. Flip the cardboard over, kill all the snails. You've trapped them. That's building a trap. Um, I don't put cardboard on top. I put it all underneath my garden. I actually don't even do that anymore because I've figured out that nothing really grows that far up in my raised beds. So, but I used to do that and it worked fine. But yeah, if you do it on top, you're going to have issues, but you can use it to your advantage and really wipe out the snail population rather quickly. If you're flip and kill, it's a every night for 2 weeks, flip and kill. Dave's getting all fancy talking about something got exhibited. Yeah, especially if you got slugs, there's nothing more rewarding than salting a slug. Nothing. So we did placement, we did what to get, we discussed the differences. As far as introductions to greenhouses, is there anything else you guys want to know about? I was gonna do another. If y'all want to keep talking about greenhouses, like the next one, we could talk about heating greenhouses and stuff like that. I don't want this to go on for hours and hours. I don't want to give like some kind of seminar or something like that. But if you guys want to do that, we can talk about heating. That's the next progression, I would think, because I mean, other than building one, which I mean, you just follow the directions or find some plans. And if anybody wants to know what kind of greenhouse I have, it's a Canopia. Is the new name of it. It was Palram, but any greenhouse that you see that looks like mine is basically the same thing. They're just branded different. That's the only thing. What's up, 54? So the back of my greenhouse, Dave, when you walk in, it gets zero sunlight through that. And I have toyed with the idea many a time about putting what's it called, like insulation board. I don't know the right term for it, but it's like a thick foam board, putting that in there. And the only reason why I haven't is because when the sun comes around the corner and it hits it, it would reflect it back and it'd probably blind me. Now that I got to wear glasses, it'd probably smoke my eyeballs. So I haven't done that. And again, I would be paid probably if I had to imagine $50 to $100 to do that, I don't know if it's really worth it to insulate that one wall. Brian, is there a difference in pest pressure in the greenhouse? Oh, it's absolutely magnified. Pest pressure in the greenhouse is magnified to the 10,000th degree. I mean, if you think about it, I'm sure everybody was like, oh, when the temperature is cold outside and the pests die, it's not cold in there. And everything's so tightly packed that it just jumps from one to the other. Boom, boom. It just jumps. So yeah, it's absolutely magnified. But again, it's not, I mean, the biggest issue I really aphids, and they're not really that big a deal once you learn how to treat them, which is just neem oil or even just dish soap and water, and just spray them. What I'm going to do this year, because they did get out of control for me last year, is I'm going to do a maintenance spray of dish soap and water, and that's it. Oh, okay. I get what you're saying, Dave. Nah, urban gardening, don't have PTSD over aphids. It's you just once you see them, treat them. Don't even look. Don't even hit them with a hose or a water bottle if it's inside and think you're going to knock them off and they can't come back. That's crap. Just put dish soap in, like, get you a water bottle, a squirt bottle, and then put you a glug of soap in it and spray them. It'll desiccate them, and just do that every couple days. You're good. Yeah, thanks, Jeff. Yeah, it's going to be interesting this year. Last year was a warm winter for us, so we were able to push things forward, and I don't know if it's going to keep up that way or not. We'll see how it goes. It would be interesting. So the problem I would see, Dave, first of all, when I go out into the greenhouse in the mornings, the humidity that builds up in there when it heats up, it's just soaking wet. It's almost like it rains in there, which is good because it will help, the soil and stuff like that. But I don't know if that would mess up that tent. Oh, I call those woolly boogers. Great for fly fishing though. So anybody here that bass fishes in the spring, go online, get you a tutorial for tying a woolly bugger, get a gold bead head, tie it up, and you will outfish every single person around you. I went out there, I won like 4 tournaments doing that. Every time. Everybody's like, what are you doing? It's a fly rig. Yeah, okay. And you just put it on your spinning rod, throw it out there, bam, they're going to hit it. And they're easy. They're like the number one fly to tie. They're super easy. It's definitely worth it. So the other thing, real quick, I do think goes great into the intro for greenhouses, the maintenance of them. We just scrubbed the outside of our greenhouse. We cleaned up the outside because it gets like mildewy and stuff. And we have to go in and do the inside of the greenhouse. And all we do with that is you get a sponge, you get dish soap, you get a hose, and you just wipe it down. And that stuff does come off pretty easy. I used to have one of those little blow up pools, and we had an extension pole with a scrubby pad on it. And unfortunately, I took the extension pole and built a ham radio antenna out of it. So I don't have that anymore, but I got to get another one because I can reach up there and it makes it so easy to scrub that off. But you got to do that I do it every fall, like the beginning, like late summer, early fall. And that will help because it just lets more light in. So that's the biggest thing. And then as far as venting it, let's say you're broke and you got a greenhouse and you're not putting a cooling system in. What I've done to mine is, first of all, you got a door, open the door during the day. The window vents itself, so that's good. I do have to replace the wax cylinder in it, which I need to order one here in a few. And then what I ended up doing is I got like a cheap solar fan. And so what I did is I mounted it up by the vent so it blew the hot air out. And when I did that, the temperature dropped by 10 degrees in the middle of the day. And it's not battery operated, so it comes on when the sun's on. So when the sun's on it, it pulls it out. But when the sun goes away, it's not sucking that extra heat out. And so in the day, as it gets cooler and that window starts to shut, it'll start to trap more heat in. But you got gaps all in there, so there's a lot of different ways to do it. Yes, that is very true, Dave. I've never been bit by a woolly bugger. Never. But I've never touched one either, so there's that. All right, so do you guys well, first of all, any questions about anything, go for it. We'll spend the last 15 minutes talking whatever. And then do you guys want to talk about greenhouses again, specifically heating a greenhouse, or do you want something else next week? H says, my husband and I built my first greenhouse this year. I haven't put in vents yet. How just installing? I was thinking about 2, 1 on each side, possible with fans in them. How big is your greenhouse? Once you say how big your greenhouse is, we can narrow it down. Matter of fact, I'll just put a poll up about the live so y'all can do that. I put a poll up there if you guys want to answer it. It is anonymous. You will not hurt my feelings, so go for it. And actually, I was just out in my greenhouse today. I think I may go drop a couple more potatoes in the potato. I don't know. It's kind of weird having them like halfway there and then putting them in, but I may do something like that. H, if your greenhouse is not very big, I would just put one vent in. Let me put it that way. But I would definitely put a fan in and go from there. Oh, the other thing too is you can put shade cloth on top. Didn't really work out well for me, so it was a pain to put up and didn't lower the temperature enough, so I just stopped doing that completely. I had advice from somebody in San Diego. The lady who owns San Diego Seed Company, we were talking one day, and she said when I first got my greenhouse, she's like, I don't even touch it in the summertime. I don't even look at it. I just back away from it completely. And that was the best advice I had ever gotten for it. Okay, so non-greenhouse related, there's a question thing up there that will keep it anonymous. Nobody else can see if you want to talk about something else, so please don't be shy because I can't read your mind and if you don't suggest put an idea up there, I can't do what you want. But it's looking like the majority wants a greenhouse. And what we may do is we may flop back and forth if that works. Couple updates. Seed starting series. I was not going to do individual plants, but a lot of people are asking about individual plants. So as I start seeds or the season comes up to start certain seeds, I will do videos about those. So I did, we got one for garlic and onions coming up. Broccoli will be coming up soon. Cabbage, all that stuff. And then right on through the spring, all the way through the season, we'll do this. Well, hey, V, I'm glad you made it. And it's good you were out in your garden. Is anybody having any specific issues in their garden? Well, hey, Elizabeth. Did you have to make any modifications or missing parts when you got your greenhouse kit? Nope. I made modifications afterwards based on what I desired, but not because of the manufacturer. I didn't have any issues. Caterpillars use BT. White flies use dish soap and water mixed or neem oil. And provide airflow, which means you probably need to thin. Neem oil for potato beetles. Cocoa cookies. If you're fighting wildlife eating everything, it's specific to this time of year. They are fattening up for winter. Get yours. I use a sonic emitters in my garden. They help. I also play a radio. Put on an AM station, something that goes all night. Put on a radio station, whatever, where there's voices and stuff, and it'll help keep them away. That's a big thing. And then you can always cover. I'm looking into. Oh, big news! I got the raccoon. One of them. Elizabeth, watch the video Saturday. It's about greenhouse, or it's about garlic. And then I have a Palram polycarbonate greenhouse. Anything that looks like mine is the same thing. It's just branded differently. Yeah, Connie, 94 is still too hot. Where are you at, Connie? BT should not turn your plants any color. I get a concentrate and mix it, so it does that. Don't spray it in the middle of the day. Spray it in the evenings, and that should help. Yeah, do you want to hear the raccoon killing story, or do you want me to leave it? It's pretty amazing. No, Dave, I shot him. He's too smart for the foothold. Connie, for some reason, I think you are in. For some reason, I feel like when I look at your name, you're up north. I don't know why. So, Jeff, all I do is weather. That's like my thing is weather. I track hurricanes. I track patterns. I and it drives everything I do, from gardening to surfing to you name it. So yeah, I do a lot of weather. So if there's ever broad stories, then I'll definitely bring them to you. Yeah, he's too smart for the foothold trap. I can't get him. If you're fighting deer, plant lavender, rosemary if you can. Anything very aromatic, plant it around your garden, and it'll help keep the deer away. Because if they touch it, they know more susceptible to predators. So that helps keep them. That's why I've got lavender spaced out around my yard. I still get deer that comes through every once in a while, but it's not as bad. Hello, Melissa. So we went out there the other night, and there was two raccoons, and they were trying to get into the coop. And look, I hunt, but I don't like to kill just serial killer. I don't like to kill just to kill. But this raccoon has been torturing me all year. He ate every single one of my tomatoes. I came out and I found a half-eaten green tomato sitting on top of a beehive. So he's just torturing me all year. So the dog goes out with me. She chases one off into the woods. The other one goes up in a tree. I grab the pellet gun and I shot him. And my wife and son were out there because we've been trying to get him for months. And he keeps going up the tree. And I'm like, well, she's like, oh, well, you didn't get him. So she starts to walk off. And before I could get it out of my mouth, I was going to say, you might want to duck. Bam! He hit the top of the chicken coop and he was dead. And we celebrated. And I don't believe in celebrating death, but that was a win. Yeah, Dave, I don't know. This mutant raccoons, there's a whole family of them. I got cousins that live in Texas County and they love Texas, boy. Texas is a cool state. Cocoa Cookies, we are looking into a solar electric fence for next year. Yeah, Elizabeth, Farmer's Almanac is not accurate at all. 1,100 feet per second. It's like 10 to 20% accurate. They've actually got major studies going on about the Farmer's Almanac, and it's incredibly off. But yeah, I watch Ryan Hall, y'all. Interesting about him is he was always a weatherman, but he used to have a vape store like 8 years ago that his channel was all about. And in that channel, he would go and he would chase storms and nobody cared. And then all of a sudden he became this huge meteor. And he's really smart. He's good at what he does. Jeff, for groundhogs, I used a Have a Heart trap with cantaloupe in it. They love cantaloupe, man. I was able, when I lived in New England, I got rid of quite a few that way. And I just relocated them somewhere else. They stink bad, though. Yeah, Melissa, it's one of those things, and I mean, unfortunately, the next time I see a raccoon, and we've got a foothold trap that you can get, same thing. Well, we have them out there, but they're not touching it. I've got a lady who contacted me. She just wrote a book about let me see if I can find it. She just wrote a book about in weather, and I'm in talks with her about coming on the podcast. Um, she's in New York, and I want to make sure that um, she's not focusing on New York weather. We went a long time without having stuff come into our yard, but once they find it, man, you get on their radar. And it's the chickens is what brings them in, really. I mean, but since we rebuilt our coop and they can't get in, oh, I forgot I had the poll going on. You can go, the podcast is anywhere. It's Backyard Gardens Podcast, Apple, Spotify, anything like that. I think there's a link in all the descriptions for it. So you guys check it out. We've got a bunch of episodes on there. Let's see. Let's end this. Okay, so we will do heating a greenhouse next. Nobody who said no answered the question up top. So there's that. So the next live will be heating a greenhouse. Write a note. All right. Oh, planting garlic. Any tips on how to prepare the soil? Saturday. Watch it. It's all about garlic and onions. And I start with garlic. So if you don't care about onions, you can watch the garlic. Anything else? Oh, I got a video to edit for tomorrow, so I've been a little slack. What can I say? I'm not perfect. Give it about 2 more minutes, unless something pops up. Jeff, what are you using for cold weather broccoli? No, I haven't been on. Dave, let me look. Look at you. Is that broccoli? Some lettuce. Ready for a low tunnel too, it looks like. Oh yeah, you got some green maters on there, don't you? When did you plant those tomatoes, Dave? If you're going to build a greenhouse, you need 2x4s treated. You're going to need a brace for the greenhouse plastic. I mean, I'm referring to a hoop style, so you could do something. Man, these damn people are killing me trying to get me to vote. Sorry, I got a text that threw me off. Something so you can get those metal tubes that you can bend. I don't know what they're called, like conduit, and you can bend it in place and put over there. Something to clip it down, and then a door to put on it, depending on how big. Coco, it's not going to be a live. It's just a video. So whenever you want to watch it. I usually try to release videos on Saturday around 8 o'clock in the morning. And I'm kind of toying with the idea of putting videos out later and during the week, later in the day, because people are watching them later instead of earlier. Yeah, so you've got that's Dave, I did fall tomatoes last year, and the way that I would do it is, if I was to change it, which I am changing it for next year, is when my tomatoes are first put the green on, my first round of tomatoes, and I'll plant my second round. That's what I plan to do. And then that should get me through to where I was in the position as you, and then it started to get cold and they were dropping all of the green tomatoes. So that way I get an extra roughly a month of growth out of them. Danlo, do you watch in the morning on Tuesdays and Thursdays? But morning for you is afternoon for me. So yeah, they'll make it, Dave. But as it gets cooler and cooler, they'll start to drop the. So what ended up happening to me is I got tomatoes off the ground, and yeah, so that's about 9 o'clock here. So everybody's garden's in a unique place, Dave. Come on. Connie, what tomatoes are they? Yeah, so you probably have sunlight issues too, Dave. I wonder if that's any relation to the. I know it's spelled a little bit differently, but the Kariba potato. Melissa, I am in coastal North Carolina. My zone doesn't matter. Zones don't matter for vegetables, so we don't even talk about them on this channel. But coastal North Carolina. Well, Connie, let me ask you this: are they indeterminate or determinate tomatoes? Yeah, Dave, that's like my garden. I have a my garden is fairly shaded, but I get a lot of grace in the summertime because of that. But in the fall and winter, I kind of struggle. And so what happens is from now until January 15th, everything slows way down. And then January 15th comes. Once the solstice happens, everything turns around, and like especially in the greenhouse, it just explodes in growth all of a sudden. And usually by February, it's like you're off to the races in the greenhouse. Yeah, we're waiting for the sunlight or the leaves to fall too, but they're not even turning colors. And it's been so dry here, they're not going to hang on. So we should start to get some more sun soon. It's a waiting game. So, Connie, grow determinate tomatoes. In the South, indeterminate tomatoes don't do well for that exact reason. Determinate tomatoes, especially where you are, you can plant them in the spring and then plant them again late summer and get two separate harvests. And the determinate tomatoes will grow. They'll put in all their tomatoes and then they'll stop. You can pull them out and then replant them. And what I do is and you'll see this next spring is my tomatoes will go in and then I take cuttings off of those tomatoes and make more plants. I hope we don't get a good blow. That's the last thing we need. One of the cherry tomatoes that we are going to put in our seed shop, I believe, is a determinant. Yep, red snapper is a good tomato. I grew that this year. We also have the Ace Bush 55 because I wanted an heirloom determinant slicer tomato collection of the plants. So we're gonna have that as well. We're not gonna have the red snapper. I did not have that issue with the propagations that I've taken in the past, Dave. Probably just struggled to get roots, but either way, it doesn't matter as long as you get what you want. When you take a propagation, you want to make sure that you're taking a sucker, and you want to. I'll discuss. I'll tell you now, and then I'll show you in the spring. I've got a video on it too, but it's so old it doesn't matter. You take the clipping. I'm trying to see if I got anything that'll look like I don't. Let's say my arm is the stem, right? So you cut it, and then you cut the leaves in half all the way around. You cut all the leaves in half. And what that does is, because your plant doesn't have any roots, and those leaves are collecting energy, but they don't have anywhere to go. So you cut the leaves in half so that the plant will focus on the roots. And then I take a pot, I have a tray, and I fill it up with water, and I take my pot and I jam that cutting as deep as it'll go all the way to the bottom leaf. And I leave it sitting in that water for about 2 weeks, and about a week in the shade, really. And then you start moving it out, and what I actually have is another tray that I took a thumbtack and I pushed a hole in it. And what that does is that drips out the water. So as you know, typically around the time that you're going to be doing this, you'll start, especially where you are, usually it's dry, it's hot and dry. So that water will leach out and it won't saturate it and keep it soaking wet. But if it rains, it can fill back up, and then it'll keep that process going. So that's how I do it. And then you just start feeding, and you got to feed heavy, and then you just plant it, and just like you would any other tomato. You go to a determinate tomato, you'll never look back. Especially if in the South, that's the way to go. Nobody I know grows indeterminate tomatoes is successful down here. I know there's people that are, depending on where you are, but because of the humidity, because of the heat, it's best to get all those tomatoes at once and start over. I know it's sexy that they keep going, but it just doesn't work out well. Connie, give them shade or plant earlier. Yep, you're gonna love the determinant. We do so we're gonna have Roma tomatoes, Ace Bush 55, and those are the two determinants, and then we'll have Purple Cherokee as well, because for some reason everybody loves those. But we do the indeterminates, and once we did that, because they come on so quick, you have all your harvest to can at once. Yep, Romas are like, I didn't do Romas this year, and I regretted every second of it. They are high producers, they're determinant, they're heirloom, they're easy to grow, and they give you manageable. Yeah, and where you are, Jeff, because you're in the mountains, you're probably a little bit cooler. So, and probably I would imagine if it's anything like North Carolina mountains, it takes longer to warm up. So that does help with the indeterminates. So I'm definitely going to spend some time this spring talking with everybody about somehow either on live or videos or both about timing your plantings. That is the whole purpose of the seed starting series. It's not to teach you how to start a seed. Look, you want to learn how to start a seed, stick a seed in dirt, water it, watch it grow. But it's about the timing of it. It's garden. That's really what it's about. Everything else, it's not a problem. But we're ingrained in false timings. We're ingrained in, oh, the weather's warming up. Let me plant. Before I go, let me just put it out there for you so you can digest it this way. There's a few people in here. When you're starting seeds, you should never, ever start cabbage and tomatoes at the same time. Ever. And then just think about that. And as we go through this series and probably a couple lives, you're going to start to see why that is. And that's a common mistake people make is they get their seed orders and they sit down with a pile of seeds. They're like, all right, we're going to start seeding. Man, I'm seeding for months. And my first sowing or, my first seeding, it'll only be a handful. And then it gets to where it's more and more and more and more. And your seed shelf goes from looking one way into a totally different group of plants. And that's really what it's about. So you should never be starting anything that we discuss on this channel that is about growing this time of year should not be started at the same time as your tomatoes and peppers and eggplants and melons and squash and stuff like that. When you put those in the garden, you need to be pulling everything else out or getting really close to pulling it out. And that's how you get a garden to grow to the maximum production. And until you figure that out, you're going to be beating your head up against the wall. So that's why I want to talk about that. And a lot of people don't understand it. And a lot of people don't have ears for that. But that's not my problem. I'm just here to tell y'all, like, this is the way that it works. And when you figure it out, it starts to click just like that. Yeah, Connie, so there's a lot of people that watch the channel that are in Arizona, and they don't even plant their tomatoes until the fall. So maybe it's like that for you too. Connie, when are you planting your So give me two things, Connie. Give me your last frost date and the date that you plant your. So Danlo, what you're telling me is you want me to do a video about organizing a seed shelf? Because I feel your struggle. Tell me, when your tomatoes are on your seed shelf, what else do you have on your seed shelf? I'm waiting for Connie to shoot me that answer. So urban gardening, I would start in this order of what you listed, separated by two weeks. I would start my peppers, then my tomatoes, then my okra, and then my melons. And even the okra and melons can be started about a month after your tomatoes. That's the order I would go. Well, you need a bigger seed starting shelf, Danlo. Now, when you start throwing flowers into the mix, it does get difficult. I will say that as far as like space goes. What I'm doing this year, because I have to start flowers for another section, is I have to, I'm going to do mass plantings of fewer flowers, and that should help me so I don't have a whole lot of thing. When do you plant your plants outside, though, Connie? I plant my bush beans and my green beans right around April 15th, April 20th, which is about a week after my first frost. Have a good one, Dave. I'm like invested in Connie's tomatoes right now, everybody. Majorly invested. Let's see. Anybody else got anything? I was just looking back to see if there's anything that I missed. All right, everybody. So that's it. Connie, let me know when you get a chance when you put them out, and we will tweak that for you. Next live, whatever, it doesn't matter to me. Y'all have a good day. I about hit the wrong button. And we'll see you next week. We're going to talk about greenhouse heating and then probably everything else. By May, we can be already in the 80s or 90s. I plant them outside when I see them where it freezes around the middle of May. Your last frost date is the 26th. Plant them on the 26th. You got to plant them earlier. My last frost date is the 15th of February. Technically, it's the 31st, and I plant mine then, and I'm farther north than you. So, you just got to just play with it. Keep pushing it earlier and earlier and earlier. You should definitely be planting in the month of April, though. And you may have to cover them, but if you really want to get a spring or a summer tomato like we're supposed to, you just got to plant earlier. That's really all there is to it. So everybody have a good day, and we will catch up with you guys on the flip side. Onions and garlic Saturday, and I don't even remember what's tomorrow, but you'll find out. See ya.